Hello and welcome to LinkAsia. I'm Thuy Vu. The Chinese dissident Chen Guangcheng is back in the news. Chen says New York University is canceling his fellowship and evicting him from a university-owned apartment. Chen says it's because of pressure from the Chinese government. The university strongly denies the allegations and says the fellowship has come to a natural end after 1 year.
Thank you very much.
Chen made it into the news in the spring of 2012 after a daring escape from house arrest in Shandong province. A self-taught lawyer, Chen got in trouble for fighting against coercive family planning policies. Apparently, with the help of activists, Chen, who is blind, managed to evade his guards and travel to Beijing. After several days hiding, Chen was whisked away into the American embassy. The Chinese were furious, particularly when Chen released this provocative video. It detailed the persecution he and his family suffered in Shandong and challenged the central government to investigate.
谁做出的这样的决定，你要展开彻底调查，并对此依法做出处理。
Also, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was about to arrive for talks with China's top leaders. After some tense negotiations, Clinton brokered a deal and Chen was allowed to leave. He was given a fellowship at NYU's law school. For a while, he was all over the media and testified before Congress about the plight of his family back in China. Then something soured. Chen says NYU was trying to stage manage his appearances and wanted him to tone down his criticism of China. He's questioned whether American universities are so concerned with maintaining academic exchanges with China that they bow to pressure from the government. For its part, NYU says Chen's fellowship had come to an end and it had nothing to do with the Chinese government. To help us sort all this out now, we have Perry Link with us on Skype. He's a professor at University of California at Riverside. A known expert on China, Professor Link has known several prominent dissidents. He edited the Tiananmen Papers, documents from a senior Chinese official about the decisions that led to the crackdown against protesters in 1989. For his work with dissidents, Link's banned from visiting China. Welcome to LinkAsia.
I'm happy to be here.
Now, who do you believe in this controversy? Was Chen Guangcheng's activism becoming an embarrassment to NYU, or is he making unfounded charges?
Well, I believe both of them, but at different levels. I think that NYU is right that it wasn't direct pressure from the Chinese government that brought Chen Guangcheng's tenure at the university to a halt. That's not the way the Communist Party of China does its repression. It doesn't get on the phone and say, all right, we want you to kick this blind lawyer out on the street or else. That's far-fetched. So there, I believe NYU. But part of what Chen Guangcheng says, in a broader sense, is certainly right. And that's that the pressures that are brought in the Western academic world from Beijing are pervasive and subtle and far-reaching. And this doesn't mean just NYU. I'm talking about the whole country.
There's some speculation that the university was worried about the future of its campus in Shanghai. Would the Chinese government, do you think, use the NYU campus as a trading card?
Not in an explicit sense. I really doubt that. I believe the NYU version of the story there. The subtle pressures date from about 2 decades ago when people like me, for example, as you mentioned in your lead, are put on a blacklist for being too outspoken. And that news spreads in the academic community. Now, in the last few years, though, I would say in the 5 years or so, recent past, added to this fear of being blacklisted has become the lure of lucre. China is offering money to the Western academic world, sometimes by establishing what are called Confucius Institutes on American campuses, sometimes with joint research projects. And in cases like NYU's, and I think Duke and Harvard and other places have also started joint campus plans in China. A lot of the funding for these things comes from the Communist Party of China. So you won't raise certain topics, you won't say certain things, you won't use the wrong vocabulary, Just as you wouldn't walk into the middle of an academic conference and fart. You just don't do it.
But let's talk about those who do become dissidents. What happens to them after they get out? Is it your experience that dissidents have an unrealistic view of how they'll be treated in the U.S.? And how disorienting is it to suddenly escape from persecution to a place where everyone, in the U.S., for example, politicians, media, activists, hangers-on, want a piece of you?
Well, this is a long story. The first waves of dissidents that fled were after the 1989 massacre. There are a couple of dozen of them who came out. And on the whole, it's true to say that they have unrealistic expectations of how easy it will be in the West and how famous they will be and how helped they will be. And often after a few months, reality sets in and gee, how are we going to pay for the groceries and how are we going to get a job and how are we going to learn English all become important, difficult problems. What you referred in the second part of your question to as people coming along, hanging on and trying to use them and so on, I think that happened a bit with Chen Guangcheng. It certainly appears to me that it happened, but that's not the typical pattern. The typical pattern is that the expectations of the dissidents are much higher than the realities of the attention that they are paid once they arrive. And they feel disappointed at that. Doubly disappointed because they're cut off from their turf in China. These are people who are well known in China and admired, and sometimes secretly admired by people who don't dare to say that we admire him. Chen Guangcheng had he was a hero in China on the internet. He was called the blind Spider-Man because he escaped from his village and climbed over a wall. It's really fairly amazing what he did, and he's a big hero. Well, when he lands in Greenwich Village in New York, he's cut off from that. He doesn't have that attention, and that's frustrating.
Perry Link, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Perry Link is professor of comparative literature and foreign languages at the University of California's campus at Riverside. You can learn more about him on our experts page.
Now on U.S. airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories. World news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.